Oh, there are many, I think, but I think the key security challenges are that there is no trust. So, I mean, even with former allies, it really requires rebuilding trust before we can move together. And I think the challenges are, I mean, I'm working on the Horn of Africa for the EU, so for me it's very clear. We have terrorism, we have contestation of states, we have transitions that are not going anywhere. We have basically transitions that are captured by militias or by armed groups, by violent actors. We have ungoverned spaces. One of the real crisis is that we stepped away from multilateralism. We acting in a reality that is really dominated by multipolarity. So leaders are picking and choosing, but it's not building a unity. It's not interacting. It's like, if I look at the Horn of Africa, 20 years ago, IGAD was providing much more of an interlink. That's gone. Now, each and everyone is trying to see what they can benefit from short term, but it's not providing, it's neither security architecture regionally, it's not a coordination amongst the states in the region. And I think very similar, the same is true for the international community. And, if I go for a level of mediation efforts, if I'm looking at Sudan, we're more fragmented than we are united.
Mario, what would you like to see happening in terms of actions or?
I think we have enough processes, at least on Sudan. I think we need a very clear coordination. We need the trust amongst each other from all the different initiatives, that we walk in the same direction, that it's not a competition, that we want the same. We want the Sudanese war to stop. We want the belligerents to go back to the barracks, and we want the transition to continue. And I think strategic objectives, we need to have, we need to have strategic objectives. I think we can maybe agree on 2 out of 3. But moving in this direction. So I think that would be the best case scenario I would be looking for. But I think we stuck in this competitiveness rather than creating the space for walking in one direction. So I don't think we need an additional initiative, but we need coordination, and for this we need trust. I think it's the end of mediations that are guided by one strong mediator. I do not see that happening in Sudan, but we cannot wait for the various mediators to find their space. I think everything has to move at the same time, but how do you synchronize? How do you coordinate? And I think this is really, we have not learned that yet. It's not just multi-track, it's also multi-layered. I mean, we as EU, we're working with the civilians, but we cannot just have a civilian track. We also need ceasefire, we need humanitarian access. So I think building up on these complexities is what's necessary, but it's a huge challenge.
So in the African context, who are the key actors who could sort of balance this out?
Very difficult. I think nothing can be done without the neighbors. It has to be owned by the region. I think it's futile to think that you can bring solutions or peace from outside. So the neighbors are key. But even more key are the actors themselves. So it's the civil societies, it's the civilians, it's the belligerents. So the countries themselves, the space in the political landscape, that is of course what should be driving the efforts, and then the region needs to own it. That's difficult enough. I think with the current situation in the UN Security Council, it's not so easy to claim a momentum for the UN. Maybe that was easier 10 years ago, it's not easy now. So I think it really needs to be built up from the region, but I think also because no one is isolated, so all these conflicts have an international angle. We cannot just step back and say, African solutions for African problems. Yes, but it's also international responsibilities. And I think having this understanding that it really needs to be driven by the people and owned by the region, but supported by the internationals. Again, we are not yet there, but I think this is really why meetings like this are quite important, not just to see potential positive reference points, but also to see where's the thinking and where are we at, and not just to gloss over and say we're all doing great, because we don't, but what does it take to get there? And I think this is where it's extremely helpful.